Welcome home and to our first reentry class. Some people find it really difficult to return home, hitting counterculture shock hard. Others seem to make the transition easily. Whatever is going on with you, we thank you for your continued dedication in making the most of this trip. Around 1 million Americans go on a short-term mission trip a year. What are you going to do to make the impact of it last in your life? Your relationship with World Renewal Brazil has now changed. You have seen what God is doing in Brazil firsthand. You now have a responsibility to pray for what God is doing in Brazil and share the insights that God has given you. And to everyone to whom much has been given, much shall be required from him. Luke 12:48.
So remember way back in class 3 when we talked about that tree and our values, beliefs, and our worldview, and also how Satan plants different lies within the culture, and that is significant in how healthy that culture is. Let's revisit that discussion and that handout. You have it here as well. Discuss as a group what you remember that you had from that discussion. The different things that you were talking about, how you saw the different consequences because of the different beliefs and the behavior and the values that you had. And also specifically in the United States, different lies that Satan has planted. So we're not saying that you're suddenly experts in culture in Brazil. We know that you've seen different things, you've felt different things, and maybe had just different discussions about differences that have happened in Brazil. But we are asking you to take a hard look at some of those things and review the Brazilian culture handout. So the things in America that you saw here and how they related to those things in Brazil. Maybe the difference between conversation, how in the United States we often debate everything, whereas in Brazil it's much more about celebration. Hey, you don't have to talk about it, just enjoy yourself. And so those different things and how you saw them in Brazil. So take about 5 minutes to do that as a team. So taking out another counterfeit building block handout, instead of looking at United States culture and our own personal worldview, we're going to apply some of the things that we saw. Again, we don't have all the answers. We were there in Brazil for a week or two, but we definitely did see things that are different from what we have experienced before. So thinking about it, what is one counterfeit building block that we want to examine from Brazilian culture? A lie that Satan has planted. And I know an example that I have seen is the lie that I only need to take care of my own people. Brazil is very collective and community, but you have to be in their community. If you're not in their community, you're not in their community. And then where is the historical roots of that idea? An example, where did that come from? Well, especially in deep poverty, there's only a certain amount of people that you can take care of. And it's physically possible when you only have a certain amount of food. And so that created those strong bonds. So we're not even saying it came from some horrible place, but it came out almost out of necessity. But how is this idea expressed in words, phrases, stories, songs, jokes? You might not even have had a chance to see that in the short time that you were in Brazil. But different ways of, hey, I can make fun of my family, but you can't make fun of my family. Or how that is expressed. And the fruit of that idea in the culture. In Brazil, something that I've seen, even from the stray dogs that you may have seen, you know, the dogs that are belong to someone or definitely are claimed by someone, they're very well taken care of, whereas the stray dogs, you know, they're just really sad looking. Please don't touch them. But where has that come? The individual, even street children, you know, they're not a part of my community. I don't even see them half the time. Is some of the ideas that come. The family, the church, the nation, how is that affected? So taking some of those ideas, maybe the example that I've just given you, go through this. If you have a small group of like 4 to 6, stay all together. If you have a larger group, please divide up into smaller groups. Go over this together. Thank you. So looking at the initial high to getting back into things paper. The self-concept. What have you learned about yourself from the trip? The values. How have your values changed? Are you showering for still so long? Are you using your water wisely? Expectations. What expectations have you had to face and give to God? Expectations of coming home. Expectations of what you would accomplish on the trip. Sense of loss. How can you give yourself closure and work what you have learned into everyday life? These are some important questions. So we'll give you about 3 minutes to talk about that, and then join us for the rest of the paper. One of the reasons you went on this trip should have been because of the desire to change the world in yourself. This desire to change the world in yourself shouldn't end when you return home. How you handle re-entry, which is the main thing we're talking about today, to a great extent will determine if you are going to continue to be affected and have an effect. So right here is Hebrews 11, 8-13. And if someone could read that and just think about that. Think about that as you're reading through this paper and thinking about Abraham and how that relates to you. So we got some tips here on how to prepare yourself and your family for a more positive re-entry experience. You can read through that and talk about that together. I like this one, the third one. Know how the Red Sox are doing is not comparable to people dying without Christ in Haiti. Your priorities may have changed because of your experience. When you share the important things that have happened to you, many people will respond with the most important things that have happened to them. You need to understand and listen and not belittle them for misplaced priorities, or they will stop wanting to listen to you. Don't make the mistake of committing an appeal to worst problems fallacy. Saying, well, this problem is worse, so it's more important. And that means yours is not important. Just because you have seen terrible suffering does not negate all other problems from being valid. People are hurting everywhere. They need God's healing everywhere. We need to be sensitive and understand that, and that God works through everything. Take about 5 minutes to talk about these tips and some ways that maybe you have found has worked for you. So hopefully by now you will have some idea of how you will be able to share with your church or individuals or your supporting group about your trip. We have some sharing your story tips that might help you to organize your thoughts and get things down to specific times where people can really understand different stories. Some of us are more natural storytellers than others, so some of us need a little help. So maybe drawing a picture, writing a poem, or finding a creative way to symbolize the most important thing that God taught you on the trip. This is super important. Also, understanding that there's going to be different kinds of opportunities. There's going to be those, hi, how was your trip? I'm walking. I'm not going to stop walking while I'm talking, kind of. You got 1 second to tell me what happened. But then you might also have the people who sit you down and say, hey, I've got 10 minutes. I want to hear it all. You know, so having a brief overview for those who just want to break the ice and say, hey, how was your trip? But also have a couple of minutes to share for those who are a little more interested. And then also a more in-depth picture for those who have really invested in you and really deserve to know, hey, what happened with my investment? How did you do? So another thing to do, pick your favorite 10 pictures from the trip and put them in the order of most important. Like, hey, these are the moments that were captured on film, because it's always nice when you can share a picture. It shares it a lot more fully than your words probably can do. Think about you and God, you know, the things that change between you two, you and others, your team, you in the future. What does this mean for the future? Those are some questions to answer when people ask you how your trip went. And also you and gratitude. What were you most thankful for? Maybe even spending some time now that you're back in the U.S. to send some thank you notes to people in Brazil and to your supporters. So when sharing at a church, thank them for their support and share a couple of those things, and then get specifics about how, you know, you're available and how much time you have to share so it works well with whatever else is going on that day. So now as a team, discuss some of the group presentations that you'll be doing together and what person has what role to make sure to relieve any possible jitters that people have and to have a concrete plan so everyone knows what their part is going to be in the presentation. So just like on your trip, when we suggested maybe you journal or you write a letter to yourself or some letters to yourself, we strongly suggest that you use this as a way to facilitate a smooth transition to coming home. So take the last letter or journal handout, and this is your devotional homework for this week. Making sure there's a lot of questions here. You don't have to answer all of them, but think about them, pray about them. Do write some of them down. This will help you and have a lasting documentation of what's going on in your head and what God is doing in your life. Spend some time as a team in prayer before you close.